Hey everybody, welcome to WagerTalk NFL Podcast. Week 13 is upon us. I'm Scott Spreitzer with Dave Cokin and Marco D'Angelo. We're going to break down a few of these Sunday Week 13 games. We're getting to the nitty-gritty portion of the season, and we've got a lot of games to talk about. Great games on the slate. Vikings, Falcons, Pats, Bills, Panthers, Saints, Eagles, Seahawks, all with a lot of meaning, both behind the counter and just from a win and loss standpoint for these teams and with the postseason implications. We're also going to have best bets at the end of the show and the return of Marco's Sandwich Game of the Week coming up in a bit. But as always, we start by heading to CGT Sportsbooks. Earlier on Thursday on the Las Vegas Sports Line, ESPN Las Vegas, Dave Cokin and I had a chance to run through the NFL Week 13 card with VP of Business Development at CGT, your good friend, our good friend, Matthew Holt.
Hey, Matt, what's going on?
Hey, look, it's one of those weeks this week, right? A ton of stuff happening. College football championship games, Thursday football, 3 big MMA cards this weekend. It's going to be one of those weekends.
All right, well, let's get it started with our NFL betting breakdown.
Sunday action, Baltimore laying 3 at home to Detroit. Totals 43 at last check at CGT, and this total opened at 40, Matt. 3 wins in Baltimore's last 4 games. Man, that passing game still leaves a lot to be desired. Makes it tough to lay points against a decent opponent.
Here we go, though. First, Pros versus Joes game of the week. 6 times more dollars wagered over the counter on the Detroit Lions. Yet 94% of the dollars wagered on account on the Baltimore Ravens on this game. This one's turning into a big-time Pros versus Joes spot early in the week here. The one spot where the public and the sharps seem to be in consensus is the over in this football game. Amazingly, open 40 up to 43, and they're still betting it over.
Matt, I would assume that this next game is not Pros versus Joes, but Pros plus Joes. Jimmy G will get the start for the San Francisco 49ers, and bettors have been responding by backing the Niners since that announcement got made.
Absolutely. Open 5 down to 3, and you're right. Over the counter and on account one-sided action. Over 97% of the total dollars wagered on the spread and the money line on this game going on the San Francisco 49ers. It doesn't help that the Bears, I believe, are 0-8. Their last 8 games as a favorite. That doesn't help certainly here in this case, and a lot of love for Jimmy G. We haven't seen him in quite a while, but the bettors are excited, and they're back in the Niners.
And I've got an angle of the day stat that will apply to this game later on. We'll talk about that when we get to the Joe's angle of the day. Meanwhile,
the Vikings at Atlanta. Atlanta laying 3 at home to Minnesota, total 47. Matt, Falcons have won 3 straight, albeit against, I think, lesser competition than the Vikings offer. But, you know, not sure it's a great spot for Minnesota, but tough going against this spread covering machine. One quick note on this game, Devonta Freeman is said to be 100%. I heard today the assistant coach is saying that he's going to get his full reps like he always would. If he's 100% healthy, seems like he is.
Yeah, and that's been the consensus. He's fully made it through concussion protocol at this point, so it seems fairly likely that Devonta Freeman will be in the lineup for the Atlanta Falcons. And the sharp bettors have taken note of that. This is one of those games where the public and the sharps tend to disagree again. 2.5 times more dollars wagered on the Minnesota Vikings over the counter. 3 times more dollars wagered on the Atlanta Falcons on account. Going to be interesting to see where this one is. I think this line's probably going to hold steady at 3.
Here's the least shocking information of the week as far as betting is concerned. The Patriots are taking on the Buffalo Bills, and the action's on the Patriots. Wow, what a surprise.
Oh, my goodness. The Patriots are such a threat to the sportsbooks week every single week. No different here. 96% of the dollars wagered on the New England Patriots. We've only taken one bet far over $500 on the Buffalo Bills this entire week thus far, and they're not only betting the Patriots, we've taken a couple of those big, kind of bridge jumper style money line bets on the Patriots, so we're certainly going to need the Bills come kickoff.
Broncos at Miami. Oh, this is a great one. Dolphins now a 1.5-point favorite, totals 39. Trevor Siemian starting for the Bronx. Jay Cutler has been cleared for the Dolphins. There you go, Matt. You want to go to this one with me?
This one I thought might end up being a Pros versus Joes, or at least I thought we might see some more Miami action than we have thus far. But right now, both over-the-counter and on account, one-sided action on the Denver Broncos here. And another surprise in this game, the two only bets over $1,100 that we took on the total, both on the over. This doesn't feel like a game with a lot of scoring in it, but the 2 biggest bets we took on the total, both on the over, and most of the the action on the Denver side.
Here's a game that I would guess this is a game that might get some split action. Neither team is really impressive right now, and neither team is awful either. Looks like it might be a pretty interesting matchup. The Houston Texans visiting the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, right now the public wants nothing to do with the Houston Texans, and that shows here. 98% of the dollars wagered over the counter right now on the Tennessee Titans. When we look at the dollars wagered on account, though, and there's actually been quite a bit of activity on this game on account, really, as the sharps seem fairly split, and both of them are taking big stands on this game. About 1.5 times more dollars wagered on Tennessee, but a fair amount of action on account on the Houston Texans as well. So, look, interesting that the sharps are split. No split with the public. They don't want anything to do with the Texans since Deshaun Watson went down.
I'm a little surprised at that, in that, it's a big, it's a good-sized number. And what have the Tennessee Titans done?
Marcus Mariota doesn't look
really
that good.
I mean, I'm not advocating Houston here, but I'm not going to get involved in the game. But I don't see why people are that confident with Tennessee laying a touchdown the way they're looking.
Yeah, I completely agree here. But look, Tennessee keeps finding ways to win football games, although albeit ugly, and they tend to win these games. The one thing the Tennessee Titans have done this year is they beat bad teams. They don't necessarily cover numbers, though. They didn't cover a number against the Cincinnati Bengals. They didn't cover the number last week against the Indianapolis Colts. But they got the job done and won those games, and that sometimes resonates with the betting public.
I'll tell you what, though, I tell people this all the time. Like you just told us 98% of the money here, going on one side, and the public or the sharps being kind of split. I keep telling people when I do these out-of-town radio shows, don't be freaked out right now by the sharps and the public, because you can ask any bookmaker in town, including Matt, including Jason at CGT. Ask anyone, and they'll tell you that the sharpest results have been by the public over the last several weeks since Week 7 of the NFL. So I always tell people, if you like a certain side, don't get scared off by that sharps versus public stuff. Colts and Jags. Feels strange to say it, but the Jacksonville Jaguars guys are a 9.5-point favorite this week, laying to Indy. Offensive line injuries for both teams, Matt, but the Jags seem like they can absorb those bumps and bruises a little bit more than the Colts right now.
Looking at very low handle on this game. The public and the sharps don't seem to want to be involved on either side of it. We haven't taken a bet over $1,000 on either team on the spread on this game thus far. Just a really low handle, a lot of small bets. About 2 times more dollars wagered over the counter on the Indianapolis Colts, about 3 times more dollars wagered on account on the Indianapolis Colts. But again, all small bets at this point, as neither the public or the sharps seem to want to take a stand on this one.
I haven't gotten involved in this game, but I'll admit I was a little flummoxed by the opening line of the Bucs being favored at Green Bay. Hundley's off a good performance last week. The Bucs suck. Well, they do. And this time of year, not exactly the weather that you'd expect to be favorable to Tampa and Green Bay, and yet Tampa opened the favorite. Well, they're not the favorite anymore, so I guess there are other people who felt the same way I did looking at that number.
Yeah, and look, fairly split money over the counter here. So look, the public seems to be able to make a case for both sides. Not on account, though. We have literally yet to take an account wager on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Several 4 and low 5-figure bets already on the Green Bay Packers. That's why that line is flip-flopped. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if this one ends up like Green Bay 2.5 by kickoff.
The Chiefs are laying a field goal at the Jets. Matt, 11 weeks ago, Kansas City won the Super Bowl, I heard. They ended the playoff hopes of the Patriots, and they sent Belichick and Brady into retirement with the game passing them by. But in reality, KC's now lost 5 of 6. And how about Mr. Rookie of the Year? From the first 5 games of the season, Kareem Hunt. Those first 5 games, 609 yards rushing, 6.3 yards per carry. His last 4 games, 173 yards on 2.9 yards per carry. And Matt, one of the issues with Kansas City this week, if you're looking to play them, is the fact that they were actually talking a little bit, I think off the record, but it kind of got heard, about potentially replacing Alex Smith at quarterback and giving Mahomes a look. I think that's panic setting in. I think they should just wait. They won't do that this week, but they've got a pretty soft slate coming up to finish the season, and I think they ought to stand pat.
Yeah, and this one's already starting to turn into a pros versus Joes for us for 2. The public's been betting against the Jets, and they got rewarded again last week as Carolina got the job done. 3.5 times more dollars wagered over the counter on the Kansas City Chiefs. Just the opposite. 4 times more dollars wagered on the New York Jets. on account, so that line's probably going to hold steady as both the publics, both the over-the-counter and the account wagerers here, both taking pretty good stands on opposite sides of this game right now.
All right, here we go. This is one of the best games of the week. It should be a lot of fun, a lot on the line for these two teams as well. The Carolina Panthers taking on the New Orleans Saints. What's the betting action look like?
Right now, overwhelmingly one-sided on the Saints, and I truly expected to get plenty of two-way action on this game, but it hasn't happened so far. 96% of the dollars wagered on account thus far on the Saints, 94% of the dollars wagered over the counter thus far in the Saints. I have a feeling that one's probably going to even out a little more by kickoff Sunday, but right now this thing's overwhelmingly one-sided on the New Orleans Saints.
Let's see if I can do the great Carmack here and read Matt's mind. The Browns at the Chargers. The public's on the Chargers laying 13 or 14. The Sharps are on the Browns. How did I do?
Yeah, pretty good there, but I will say this. The over-the-counter, it's not as bad as you think. So there's actually been a lot of money wagered on this game. 14 seems to be a trigger number the last 3 years, where any time a game is 14, we tend to get public action on the dog, too. That seems to be that trigger number. Still 3 times more dollars wagered over the counter on the Chargers, but it's really close on account right now. Look, we're at about $45K taken on account on the Browns and the $38K taken on account on the Chargers. So while it's still early, that number is only $7,000 different on account. Look, there's people taking big stands on account on the Chargers as well, although you're right, a little more action on the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, we'll see what happens as the numbers crunchers get involved over the weekend, because they're stubborn and they'll come in on the Cleveland side. That's my opinion. So I don't think you'll get to 14.5. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up maybe. You think there's a chance this just ends up like 13.5?
Yeah, I do. I think it's far more likely to go to 13.5 than it ever is to go to 14.5.
The Rams and Arizona will match up. Cardinals performed reasonably well last week, I should say, and got an upset of sorts against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll see what they can do with a Rams team that put together a very convincing performance last week against the New Orleans Saints. The Rams rightfully the favorite on the road in this one.
Yeah, and this one, just on the surface, you go, I could see how this one could turn into a pros versus Joes game, but it absolutely hasn't. At this point, almost dead even. Less than $300 separate the amount wagered over the counter on these two teams, and the money has actually come in on the LA Rams on account. 6 times more dollars wagered on account on the LA Rams right now. Most of that is two big bets on the Rams by some sharp players. But I'll tell you right now, the sharps are on the Rams.
Giants at Oakland. Ben McAdoo called. He can't believe you took this number up rather than down a couple of points when he inserted Geno Smith in the starting lineup. What a soap opera. You know what? You can't tell me, Matt, that the brass isn't looking to tank, but that doesn't mean the players are.
Look,
but they've got Geno
paper,
Smith at
this looks
quarterback.
like a terrible game. A 2-9 team going on the road against a 5-6 team, and the 2-9 team taking their Hall of Fame, longtime quarterback and sticking him on the bench for Geno Smith. That feels as close to tanking as there could be in the NFL. But surprisingly, the Sharps are still on the New York Giants here. And this is our third highest handle of the game. If you would have told me just looking at the games this was the lowest handle game, I wouldn't have been surprised. But that's not the case. And it's not the over-the-counter dollars on this one, which, by the way, is 97% of those over-the-counter dollars wagered on the Oakland Raiders. It's the amount of account action take. The Sharps have really taken a stand on both sides of this football game. Right now, about 1.75 times more dollars wagered on the Giants than the Raiders on account, but there has been significant action on account on this football game.
I don't even think it's a sharp betting it now. So I this is where I think the term sharps gets overused, because this line, they're going to pound Oakland on the weekend. So if you're really a sharp player, you wait until game time to bet this thing and get 10. You might get 10.5. To me, taking 9 or 9.5 now off the adjustment, you're not even. To me, that's a I don't care if it wins or not. That's a terrible bet. I don't think that's a sharp wager at all.
And we'll have to see here what ends up happening with this game. You're right. It certainly appears like the floodgates could open on the Oakland side of this game. But we've seen so many of these backfire this year, people betting on or against these first-time starters of the season, that it's going to be interesting to see where the Sharps land on this one.
All right, well, let's talk about this game, because it really is a terrific Sunday night matchup. I know the Seahawks are beat up, but it's still in Seattle. The 12th man there is absolutely tremendous, and the Eagles are are just a ridiculous juggernaut right now. This should be a real big action game and lots of fun to watch as well.
Yeah, highest handle game of the week so far, and that includes tonight's game, which is being played tonight. I mean, anytime you have a game that day, and the rest of the games aren't till Sunday, you expect to have huge handle for that Thursday night game already and lower handle for the Sunday games. Not the case. The biggest handle game of the week, as of right now, is Philadelphia at Seattle, and the public is the over-the-counter dollars on this game are fairly split, close, just under 2 times more dollars wagered on the Philadelphia Eagles than the Seattle Seahawks. But overwhelming one-sided action on account right now on the Philadelphia Eagles. That's why that line has gone from 4.5. It's not the public driving it up. It's the on-account sharp players hammering Philly in this spot. Obviously, Seattle has a lot of injuries. I still thought it was a favorable spot for them at home, but that's why I'm not labeled as a sharp, because they are all on Philly.
But about a 9-point adjustment from where it would have been. I was telling Dave yesterday, I mean, obviously you got to make changes, but if this was starting October rather than kicking off December, you're talking about a 9-point difference here probably.
Yeah, absolutely, and what a game this could still be. I know Seattle's defense has lost just about every one of those Legion of Boom players we're all so used to seeing, but the offense hasn't been terrible lately. I thought they responded well. They played a decent game against Atlanta, just fell a field goal short. If they didn't blunder the way they played at the very end of that game, very well could have kicked a field goal, gone to overtime in that one, bounced back last week. So I'm not sure that while the Seattle defense isn't all there, the Seattle offense is still playing pretty good football.
And the analytics on Russell Wilson are absolutely outstanding. He's actually having a great year. Hey, we did the college betting rundown yesterday, but one thing we really didn't touch on much is the multitude of props that you guys have put up at CG Technology, that all the CG books around town and on the app as well. You've got a bunch of really good props for the title games this weekend.
Yeah, look, we always offer big Super Bowl-style prop sheets for all the isolated NFL games, but we did it this week for the conference championship game, Stanford USC. We have a full Super Bowl-style prop sheet. If you want to bet on Sam Darnold, Ronald Jones, Bryce Love, we have props for all the players in that one. TCU, Oklahoma prop sheet, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Miami, Florida, Clemson. It's that time of year, right? These are the biggest games of the season. They have so much meaning. It's going to determine who goes to the playoffs. And lucky for us this year, we also have the biggest players involved in these games. Sam Darnold at USC, Bryce Love at Stanford, all the way down. Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, J.T. Barrett at Ohio State. All the premier players are playing in these games, and that really brings out the prop players, and I expect the prop handle this weekend to be absolutely through the roof.
And, of course, you want to have the app installed on your mobile device so you can play these games at your convenience. In fact, it's really the only way to play them.
Look, if there's ever a weekend you didn't want to be trying to run back and forth to a book, it's this weekend. 3 huge MMA cards, Pac-12 championship game on Friday, Thursday night football tonight, the rest of the conference championship Saturday, a huge NFL slate with a great Sunday night football game. Take 5 minutes, download the app, sign up for an account, whether you're at the bar, the pool, which in Vegas you can be at this time of year, wherever you are, bet the games where you watch the games from the convenience of your mobile phone. That's how people bet in 2017.
Banner weekend of mixed martial arts action. There's a whole bunch of stuff this weekend, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, let's start off with the smaller card tomorrow, the Bellator card. This is actually a really strong Bellator card. And the third fight down on that card, Hisaki Kato versus Chidi Njoukani. Chidi Bang Bang Njoukani, trained by my good friend Nick Blumgren, who also trained UFC Hall of Famer Stephan Bonner, who normally hosts the podcast with me. Chidi Njoukani here, only minus 165 because he's coming off a first-round knockout loss against former Bellator welterweight champion Andrei Koreshkov. But before that, when you look at it, he was on a 9-fight unbeaten streak, and Chidi Njoukani tends to dominate strikers. And that is exactly what he got here in Hisaki Kato, who is also a kickboxer. Njoukani tends to really dominate strikers. He's moving up in weight here because he was having such a hard time making 170. But at 6'3", he's still going to be the bigger guy here at 185 pounds. Hisaki Kato, 8-2, both losses by knockouts, both losses to strikers here. I don't normally like to lay favorites. It opened 160. You could still get 165, but I'm laying the favorite here with Chitty Bang Bang and Jukwani.
For the Dick Van Dyke belt.
I like that.
Anyway, UFC 218 Saturday night in Detroit. I want to get to, you told me earlier that you got a real nice dog that you're sinking your bankroll into a little bit here, but I wanted to talk about the co-main events for just a second. Holloway Aldo 2, of course, and you had Max Holloway about a 290 favorite at CGT. The comeback on Aldo plus 245, and it is for the lightweight championship. Of course, Holloway was supposed to fight Frankie Edgar, Matt, and he got injured, so they get Aldo to come in. What I like about Aldo, and I don't know if you like the favorite or the dog here, but the one thing I like about him that gives him half a chance is that he wasn't like sitting around doing nothing. He was training for a fight himself and then took this fight. Does it matter to you? And also, does it matter to you that we've seen Jose Aldo kind of shy away from going to his legs and from really offering up much of a kick defense, or offense, I should say, in his last several fights?
Look, for 8 years, between 2006 and December, basically, of 2015, Jose Aldo didn't lose a fight. He had like a 19-fight unbeaten streak. 2006 to December 12, 2015, he did not lose a fight, and during that time frame, I think the only cases that you could even make, if you're going to make a case, that anyone was better than Jose Aldo pound for pound would have been John Jones or maybe Demetrius Johnson. This was the pound-for-pound best fighter on the planet for the better part of 8 years. The problem now for Jose Aldo, and we see it with MMA fighters much quicker than we see it with boxers, is once these guys start fading, sometimes they fade fast. Remember Chuck Liddell, his chin gave out, and it suddenly was a landslide of KO losses. Michael Bisping just got knocked out 2 times in 3 weeks. These guys tend to fade fast, and Max Holloway right now sort of reminds me of what Jose Aldo was 5 years ago.
Boy, it feels like Alistair Overeem ought to be 65 years old. We've been talking about him forever. He's stepping in against Francis Ngannou, and I saw a Joe Rogan clip the other day on his podcast where he had mentioned that Ngannou's punch was measured as the most powerful punch on the planet Earth by those guys that have been measured. But does he have the skills to step in and take it to Overeem? And we know that if he lands one of those punches, Overeem's been known to have that porcelain jaw and to hit the deck. And I'm looking at this over-under, Matt, and I'm seeing 1.5 rounds, juice on the under. This could be over if you blink.
It's not supposed to go long, and I'll tell you all, for the last 2 weeks, really, I've planned on making a bet on Alistair Overeem. Look at the guy. A, he's a Hall of Famer, but B, look at the people that he's fought and beat. He just beat former UFC heavyweight champion Fabricio Verdum in his last fight, beat former UFC heavyweight champion Andrei Arlovsky, beat former UFC heavyweight champion Junior Dos Santos, beat former UFC heavyweight champion Frank Mir. This guy's resume is unbelievable. Beat former UFC heavyweight champion Brock Lesnar. I mean, Alistair Overeem has been in there with the best of the best. He's on an amazing streak right now, winning 6 of his last 7 fights, with his only loss to current heavyweight champion Stipe Miocic. So I think there was a strong case to be made here for Alistair Overeem. And then I watched Francis Ngannou's live workout yesterday and went, oh my God, I want nothing to do with stepping in front of that guy right now.
He's unbelievably powerful. When I heard Rogan talking about him, describing the way he was, this guy was homeless on the streets of France.
If you get an opportunity, just YouTube his live workout. You know, these fighters do this all the time before these fights. They have a live workout in front of the media. It's only about 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes long. If you were thinking about betting Alistair Overeem, watch the Francis Ngannou workout before you do.
Yeah, as much as I like Overeem, boy, if you can hit that chin, there's times when he goes down over under again, 1.5 rounds. You got an underdog for us from what you told me earlier.
Yeah, I'm going to play Sergio Pettis here. This is a fight that was supposed to happen about 6 months ago. Sergio Pettis against former Olympic gold medalist Henry Cejudo. And I took Pettis plus 220, and the line continues to go up. But we talk about it on this show all the time, how young fighters are slightly overmatched early in the UFC. It's hard for a 20 or a 21-year-old. Sergio Pettis started fighting professionally in the UFC at 19 years old, but now, suddenly he's only 24 years old still. It takes a little time to get into that groove, to be able to have the strength, maturity, and diversification in your game to be able to handle these guys that are full, true mixed martial artists. That's the case now for Sergio Pettis at 24, who I think has improved as much as any fighter in the UFC the last 2 years. Sergio Pettis has won 4 straight fights, including an easy decision on enemy territory in Mexico City against Brandon Bam Bam Moreno in his last fight. And this is a guy, when you look both of their resumes, they're really similar, right? Henry Cejudo lost to Joseph Benavidez, lost his chance at Demetrius Johnson, but other than that has looked pretty good, coming off a knockout win over Wilson Heiss. But he's really short, has really short arms, and Sergio Pettis' striking is absolutely precision here. I know Pettis has looked a little overmatched when he was younger at about 19, 20. This guy is razor sharp right now, and I'm going to make a prediction right now. Sergio Pettis has a huge underdog price, upsets Henry Cejudo this week, and by the end of next year, Sergio Pettis goes on to upset Demetrius Johnson and become the flyweight champion of the world.
That's a strong prediction. All right, and, lines move in a hurry on these fights. Again, another reason to have the app.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and there's so much action going on. I mean, you could be at a party where they're watching the football game first, then you're going to go to a UFC party. Well, make your life easier. Take the 5 minutes. Download the app. Sign up for an account, whether you're at a fight party or one of these amazing football parties there's going to be for these conference championship games this weekend. Take the 5 minutes. Download the app. Bet the games where you watch the games from the convenience of your mobile phone. That's how people bet in 2017.
A lot of great information in this last half an hour or so with Matt Holt. Follow Matthew on Twitter at Matthew Holt VP. Thanks, Matt. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. Best of luck this weekend. Take care.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to Wager Talk NFL version. Don't forget, you can check out the College Football Podcast, also free right here at WagerTalk.com. Guys, let's start out with the Vikings and the Falcons in Atlanta, Georgia. Right after the Saturday SEC title game, we get this one. 2 good games in a row, 2 days in a row. Falcons laying 3, Marco. The total 47.5 in this particular game. And are you a buyer yet on the Atlanta Falcons with this little win streak they got going?
No.
Okay, we'll move on.
Their defense still isn't any good.
Right.
Okay. Look, and I'm not saying just believe all metrics and throw out everything else, but you look at the metrics; they're just not very good defensively. The offense has certainly picked it up, but it's not like the Vikings. And look, here's the tough part about this game, and it's why when we get to the best bets, this won't be one of mine. The Vikings are not in a great scheduling spot, and I think that's a bit of a negative for them. But boy, I'm just not that situational in the NFL, and I'm not knocking anybody who is, certainly, because I'm sure that they might be doing better than I am. But the Vikings are still the better football team here, and they're getting points. And to me, this is a one-possession game again, and I think it has a good chance to be the best game of the week in the NFL. I would lean toward the dog in this game. As of now, not with great conviction.
Your choice is a spread covering machine in Minnesota if you go against them. If you go on the Falcons, by the way, I was going to mention, if you didn't get this news on Thursday, it was announced that Devonta Freeman is 100% healthy. Yep. He's going to get all his normal reps in this game for the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously a big bonus for Atlanta. The Patriots are laying 8, the total 49. That's against the Bills. That's your number at CGT at last check. The line is higher in some other shops. I saw as high as 9 on this one. Marco with New England being the favorite. And big win for Buffalo last week in Kansas City. I was happy about it because it was one of the few dogs that covered, and I happened to be on them. I had a good week in the NFL. And also because before the season began, I took the under 9 wins with Kansas City. And 5 weeks into the season, the ticket almost ended up in my fireplace. But now, Buffalo, big win. They're back in the playoff mix, but here come the mighty Patriots laying 8.5 points.
Yeah, this is just I think too big of a number on the road. I know you don't want to get in front of the Patriots. And right now, this is the Patriots. The next 3 weeks are going to determine the season for the Patriots. Yes, they're going to be in the playoffs. Yes, they're going to win the AFC East. That was a foregone conclusion. But are they going to be the number 1 seed, or are they going to be the number 2 seed? That's what's hanging in the balance. And the next 3 weeks are going to play that out because they've got to play 3 straight road games. They play Buffalo this week. Then they go to Miami next week. Yeah, it's Miami, but it's a road game on a Monday night, and then they come back on a short week and play the Steelers in Heinz Field for most likely number 1 seed. Mm-hmm. They need to get through these next 2 weeks to set up that Steeler game. I just can't lay this many points. I know I'm stubborn, because the favorites just continue to win in the NFL.
Chalk love fest last week again.
The books, I tweeted out last week, the 4 words they hate to hear: Patriots cover, Browns don't.
Yep. We're talking about that on radio this week.
Yeah, it's week after week after week. But this is a spot where Buffalo, they have had a history of sometimes, playing New England tough, but they can't get over the hump against them because New England just, continues to win.
Sure.
But at over a touchdown, playing at home, Tyrod Taylor, he's playing with house money now. Mm-hmm. He got benched and he got the job back. He's not losing it anytime soon after what Peterman did in his half of football out there. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Bills plus the points here, close my eyes, and hope that New England doesn't, fake a punt to cover a score or whatever. I mean, it's just
all this chalk.
Everything they do works out for New England. Yeah. It's uncanny.
Well, remember week 1 when they were out of the playoffs and Belichick and Brady were forced into retirement by Kansas City.
Kansas City was going to the Super Bowl.
No, I thought they won it. By the way, is this one of the few times last year in the NFL from October on and through the regular season and the playoffs up until the Super Bowl, and now since week 7, this has got to be one of the first times that you probably are glad you're not a bookie instead on the other side of the counter.
For sure.
I mean, this is crazy for these books.
It is, and what people don't understand is we see these arguments on Twitter where everybody knows everything about everything, and the Twitterverse just says, well, why don't the books just raise the numbers? They have been raising the numbers. These are the biggest numbers we've seen for favorites, and they're still covering. But the thing that the public doesn't understand is they can't over-adjust the numbers, because the minute that they get too high on them, you're getting the so-called sharps and big money players that are going to come in, and they're going to bet 5 figures. They're not Joe Blow that's betting, a few $100s, but all those few $100 bets add up. Where the damage is being done to the books is not necessarily on all the straight bets. What's happening is all these favorites that the average Joe wants to put a $50 parlay together with 10 teams, 6 or 7 teams get there and get that big payday.
Give you a good example. Patrick Everson was on with us yesterday on radio, and Patrick Everson had mentioned talking to Johnny Avello, and I think it was Johnny Avello, and he said basically you go against Cleveland, you play on Minnesota, you play on New England, just throwing out 3 teams, and you basically have your 3/4 of your 4-team parlay that you've just put together, and they're going the way you want them almost every week. So you find just that one team to make that 4th team of the 4-team parlay. It's a little bit different than what it was 3 years ago when it came to trying to hit 4-team parlays for the public.
I think eventually you're going to see the books kind of unite in something, and they're going to make it. You're going to have to pay some vig if you want to bet an NFL teaser. Well, they're getting killed on teasers.
They're getting killed on teasers, and if you remember a couple of years ago, it was just 2 years ago, Caesars, the most stupidest thing I've ever seen. They had that first weekend of the playoffs, which that's the week where you have bigger numbers.
Right.
So the teasers come into play more. Right. When you have the 7-point favorites, or just over 7, and you're teasing them down through the sweet spot, the 3, 4, 6, and 7. Sure. They got killed. It didn't matter which way you teased.
Right.
Up or down, they all came in that week. So Caesars panics, and they take the teasers off the board for the second week of the playoffs.
I'm not going to do that, because then people are going to go elsewhere.
They'll go out, but they did that. But what was stupid is the second round, all the games were 3 and 3.5, which are beautiful for teasers for the books, because you're either taking it up to a number where you're not getting the true value, or you're teasing it through the 0, which is you just don't asinine. You don't do that. But the public, they say, well, I can take a small favorite and make them a small dog. That's good. No, you're getting no value doing that. But the books, I thought it was the stupidest thing Caesars ever did.
I would go the juice route. And I know that some credit books who don't operate legally, obviously, throughout other areas of the country are doing exactly that. Yeah.
They're going to have a built-in excuse.
Their customers, it's like, you don't like it? Go find somebody else to bet when they can't.
Well, when sports betting's legalized around the country, they're going to have a built-in excuse to raise the juice, but for different reasons. I got to tell you right now, I mean, look at this, guys. Think about this. Philadelphia's on an 8-game spread run. New England's like 24-7 the last 31 against the spread. Cleveland, we know what they do.
7-35
7-35 or whatever it is.
Unbelievable.
You go, there's 3 teams, 3/4 of your 4-team parlay every single week, and you're going to win a couple during the course of the season. I'm joking, but I mean, more than a couple.
Friggin' yacht, for crying out loud.
Absolutely. Just
now, the next bet you have it permanently staffed. It's just, wow.
You mean you don't yet? I'll tell you what, it's just amazing, and I'm glad not to be on that side of the counter this season at last in the NFL. Panthers and Saints doing battle in New Orleans.
What a game
New Orleans laying 4.5, the total 48. That one's gone up about a half a point. You know what I failed to mention real quickly before we move on here? If the folks didn't hear Matt Holt with his betting handle in the NFL earlier in the show, at the top of the show, go back and check it out. But I'll tell you this, as far as New England, 96% of the over-the-counter money was on the New England Patriots minus the points in that game against the Buffalo Bills.
Was drunk and circled the wrong team on his ticket.
He's a guy that doesn't have a boat, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, let's get to this game. Panthers and Saints. Speaking of big numbers, Matt also said on that first segment, 94% of the public money on New Orleans, 96% of the sharp money on New Orleans. New Orleans laying 4.5, Dave, total 48.
I think this is a really good game. Not necessarily to bet on, but to watch. Divisional game, it's a really big game for both teams. The Panthers, I know they won and covered last week, but they were lucky to win and cover both. They didn't play well against the Jets, but they got the win. Mm-hmm. They snuck out of there. So, Marco, this kind of applies to if you think the Panthers are a good football team, it would kind of fit that theory that you were talking about in college football. Really, I'll be curious to hear what you have to say about that. The Saints, they didn't escape last week. They've struggled their last 2 games. They should have lost the Redskins game. That was a remarkable comeback in the fourth quarter, late in that game. And they were outplayed by a considerable margin last week against the Rams. I lost the game. I had the Saints plus a couple points and never felt like I was going to win it, even though it was only a 6-point game, which, I didn't get killed. They were dominated in that football game. The Rams were the much better team. So maybe this 8-game streak the Saints had, I'm not taking anything away from it, but maybe there's going to be a little regression at this point because I don't think they're that good. I think I lean to Carolina in this football game. It's not a strong opinion as of now, but I kind of like the fact the Panthers escaped with the win in a game in which they didn't play well last week, and now they're getting more than a field goal in a game that figures to be close.
Yeah, and by the way, that 94%, 96% stuff we just talked about Thursday night, it's going to come back down a little bit over the weekend. There'll be some Panther money, no doubt about it. Cam Newton has got to do more with his arm, though, Marco. As Dave mentioned last week, fortunate win, fortunate cover for them. If you watch what he's done in 4 of his last 6 games, his yards per pass average is 6 or less, and in 2 of those games it was under 5 yards per pass. He gets Olsen back last week. Maybe they'll build on that a little bit. But again, he's going to have to start doing a little bit with his arm.
He does. But the one thing is the fact that he does have his feet can extend drives. When a play breaks down, he can turn it into a positive play, and that's what has kept drives going. And last week, I'll be honest, I had a bet on the Jets last week, and it was because of the situational spot. You had Carolina was coming off their bye week. They went into the bye off that laugher on Monday night against Miami. They came out playing the Jets, who, although the Jets have played scrappy, they're still the Jets. Nobody expected them to do anything this year, and they had this game on deck. It was a perfect spot to go against them. And the Jets should have covered that game, if not win the game. Right. They kicked the last field goal only because the Jets had one more timeout in their pocket that forced them to kick that field goal because there was about a 30-second difference in the clock, and that cost the spread there. But, yes, they had their close game, and they escaped. Also a factor that I like, in the NFL, when you get beat on your home field in the first meeting and then your dog in the rematch. I love taking the road dog in the rematch. And Carolina's not the same team now that they were.
No, they're better now
than they were at the beginning of the season when they got drilled by the Saints, which started the Saints on this big 8-game winning streak. And if you guys remember, a few weeks back when the Saints played Buffalo, I was on them. I know a lot of guys were on Buffalo that week. We all thought that, the Saints were a little bit counterfeit. They hadn't played a tough schedule. They hadn't played a good quarterback in several weeks. The defense was playing well. And at the time, we thought Tyrod Taylor was a good enough quarterback. That's the game that got him benched. But if you look the last 2 weeks, when he has faced the team with a quarterback, Kirk Cousins dissected this team in the Dome. And then last week, and I was on the other side, Dave. I beat you on one for a change. I had the Rams. That was my top play last week.
Top play last week too. Yeah.
It was a 6-point game, but it never played like a 6-point game.
The Rams were completely superior in the game.
That was a big game for the Rams, and we'll talk about that later. I like Carolina here, and Cam Newton, I don't care what he comes out wearing in the press conference at the end of the game. As long as he gives me a W, he can wear anything he wants. I'm going to go ahead and take Cam Newton, but just don't celebrate every single play on the field.
I like giving the ball to the kid. That's cool after he scores, but
that's
doesn't
good.
Celebrate
but everything
constantly.
else, but everything.
By the way, these choreographed routines,
they're getting old, aren't they? Fast.
Really
Some of them are pretty bad.
Stink.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if you really want to go that route, then call like a Hollywood producer or something like that and get somebody to come up with something good, because these guys are coming up with it's absolute garbage. It stinks.
It's kind of dumb. It's kind of boring. It's
corny.
It's corny as hell.
Okay, it isn't cool. I get newsflash, NFL guys. You're corny. You're not cool.
So we're not going to do some of those with us three in the studio on the videos next week?
No, I don't think so.
Did you guys see the Monday night game, the Baltimore? I think it might have been
little bits of it. Yeah.
He had forced the fumble, and the play is still going. Behind him, they're scrambling for the football because it's squirted loose. He must have thought that the play was done, but he's standing there like this. Celebrating with his arms, with his chest.
By the way, when he says like this,
and behind him, the camera, they're still going. They're still going, trying to get the football. I'm going. Baltimore got the recovery, but I was saying if they wouldn't have got that ball, and you're sitting there,
and he's one of the best players in the league, even though he's 93 years old.
Right,
and he's doing that.
You're sitting there studying with your pose in the middle of the field while they're still trying to get the football. I'm like, come on, guys.
I don't know. This choreographed stuff, it's just, as Dave said, is corny. Eagles and the Seahawks are going to wrap things up on Sunday night, and got to think that the books might need the underdog in this one. This Philadelphia line has gone from 3.5, or I saw as low as 3 actually in some shops, but from 3 all the way up to 6. About a 9-point difference from where it would be 6-8 weeks ago. The total sitting at 47, Marco. And, we talked to Matt earlier today, and he said in the opening segment here, this will be, and no shocker, the highest handle of the weekend for the books will be this Philadelphia-Seattle game.
Yeah, and this is one of those teams you talked about that's on the win streak with Philadelphia, and who would have thunk it coming into the season that we would be talking about Philadelphia as the number 1 seed in the NFC. But as we talked about on videos this week, guys, look at what they're doing and how their success is. It's old school football. Yep. They're running the football first, which is setting up the passing game. Carson Wentz, second-year quarterback's playing marvelous. He's not making mistakes because they're not putting him in positions where he has to carry the team. Mm-hmm. They're getting to play passes off of play action. You keep the defense guessing. They're running the football well. They're controlling time of possession. All of that adds up to victories. Now, on the flip side, they're going to play a Seattle team that if you just look at the injury report, you're going to say they have no shot in this game. They've got cluster injuries on the defensive side of the ball. You lose Richard Sherman. You lose Cam Chancellor. Yep. And they've got a third guy out.
Shaquille Griffin's got to be playing in this one. If he's banged up, then they got nobody.
Yeah,
it's a good thing they got Earl Thomas back. He was
that's right.
Yeah.
They got Earl Thomas back last week.
But you look at what Russell Wilson has been able to do, and I know I always joke with you, Scott, with your man crush on
no idea what
Russell
you're talking
Wilson.
about.
But you have to love the guy because he's had no offensive line all year. He has been running for his life the entire season.
Great season.
And
you guys get your own man crush.
If you really want to talk, he doesn't have the numbers that puts him into the MVP race and so forth. But if you talk about the most valuable player for this Seattle team, they don't have the 7 wins that they have without Russell Wilson.
They're 3-8.
Yeah, it's just been unbelievable. But do I want to back them?
Right.
This has been one of the toughest venues in the NFL, but they've lost 2 in a row at home, which doesn't happen. podcast that I did earlier today, the last time they lost 3 games in a row at home, you got to go all the way back to 2008, which obviously before Russell Wilson.
Sure.
And this is a spot where I can't pull the trigger with them because of the injuries. But with that said, Philadelphia is going to get their points. Philadelphia is going to score. And Russell Wilson finds a way to get points on the board. I think this is going to be like the Monday night game a couple weeks ago against Atlanta when they go up and down the field, both teams. I'm going to take the over in this one. And if you're rooting for Seattle, just pray that Pete Carroll doesn't make bonehead mistakes like he did on the Monday night game, because that loss was solely on him, not on the team.
I like your side here, your play, I should say, on the over. I think that makes sense. And as far as the side goes, I'm not going against the Eagles, period.
A one-sided sharp action on Philly.
I don't even need to say anything else. I'm not going against the Eagles.
Yeah, and I was going to say, even though they've been losing, it's kind of, I'm kind of surprised that there's this one-sided sharp action on Philly because of that number being worded. Because this looks like the typical sharp math models say, take that dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the Eagles' stats are getting to be ridiculous.
I know,
now.
but then they get beat. This is one of those situationals where you just see it 2 years ago. You see it last year, where there's certain guys who will not get off the home underdog in this particular game.
I know.
I think people are getting tired with how many times we've taken the Cowboys in situations like that. The teams that, hey, history says they're going to rise up, but they're not doing that this year.
Not recent history.
Yeah, not this year and not last year.
And the Eagles right now are just a wrecking machine. They're killing teams.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Okay? If they play at the level they've been playing at, Seattle can't beat them.
I was just going to say, this might not be that fun of a game if they play at the level they've been playing at. When your quarterback is your number one rusher on the offense, which is Russell Wilson, it's going to be tough.
Wilson's been fun. His metrics are just outrageously good this year, but they don't have anything else.
All right, guys, those are the 4 games we're going to talk about, but we have 1 to go before Best Bets, and it's the return of Marco's sandwich game of the week. He texted me today, and he goes, I got a what'd you call it? A double-decker sandwich game of the week, you grand gobbler, you.
Yeah, we usually don't do these in the NFL because, hey, these guys are getting paid. They're supposed to show up every week. But I just see one on the card that just screams of a situational play, and I got to do it. And we're going to talk about the L.A. Rams as they travel to play Arizona. Last week, if you watched the game, which, again, that was my big play, so I watched that entire game. At the end of the game, if you saw the coaching staff, the players, and everybody else, the way they were celebrating that win.
They knew it was our top play. They were happy for us.
Absolutely. Well, I was celebrating with them. But for me, it was like what came to my mind was they felt vindicated. They felt legitimized. Now, because everybody was saying, well, you haven't played a real tough schedule. You caught guys with injuries and everything else. But they played a hot team. They played the Saints, who was on that big winning streak. And to get that win, I just think I don't see how they come in with the same intensity. And look at the schedule. Guys, they played at Minnesota 2 weeks ago. That was the marquee game of the week that week. Then they have the showdown with the Saints last week. They go on the road this week to Arizona. Yes, it's a division game, but look who the 2 next games are after Arizona. You got to go and play at home Philadelphia, and then if Seattle somehow finds a way to win this week against Philadelphia, that game in 2 weeks could be for first place, because remember, Seattle did get the first game. So they have the tiebreaker if they end up, tied. This is a spot for them that I feel they come up flat. Arizona, they don't got anything to lose. They got to win with, I hate to say this, Blaine Gabbert led them back in a game after, they relinquished the lead that they led the entire game, and he drove them down the field thanks to a Blake Bortles interception at crunch time. You could always cue one of those up, but they got to win. I got to look at Arizona plus the points as a live dog. Rams laying 7 on the road, can't do it.
Their one weakness is against the run. We'll see if Adrian Peterson can do a little bit better than he did in the first meeting when he didn't do anything and the team got beat 33-0. But as you mentioned, that situational double-decker sandwich game of the week from a guy who knows his food. All right, guys, let's take a quick timeout, our final timeout. When we come back, Best Bet. Stick around.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to Wager Talk NFL version. We have our best bets in just a moment. First, a quick note. Be sure to check out the College Football Wager Talk podcast free right here at WagerTalk.com. And be sure to check out all the videos. We've got a bunch of videos. Dave Cokin, Marco D'Angelo, and I cut a bunch of football videos. And we had Lou of @Gamblu fame. Follow him on Twitter @Gamblu, who came in and talked a little UFC with us on the videos. And I've got it here, and I'm going to find it because Matt Holt did say I could give it away if you didn't hear our radio show earlier on Thursday. UFC best bet. It's a big $2 underdog that he's taken, more than $2 on Pettis this weekend, who's going to be matched up against Cahuto. Yeah, it's 220, plus 220. Sergio Pettis, who's an excellent range striker.
No relation
Matt Holt
to
is
Gary.
on him. What's that?
No relation to Gary Pettis.
or Andy. But Henry Cejudo is his opponent, and Matt made a great case for why we should jump on Sergio Pettis at plus 220. He said that number might even go up a little bit.
Was that also the fighter where he suggested that you watch the workout? No, that was another fighter.
No, that's Ngannou.
Yes.
This cat, Francis Ngannou, he was homeless in France not that long ago. He's now a monster in the UFC, and I mean monster because of the force. He's going to be fighting Alistair Overeem.
Right.
Overeem, obviously, he's been around forever. Great fighter. He's proven himself time and time again. But if you tap him on the jaw a little bit, he can go down. He can't have a porcelain chin. And he mentioned to go to the live YouTube workout sessions during the day when you watch this kid Ngannou. I'll tell you this much about him. I saw Joe Rogan do his podcast the other day. They've got this machine, and it's not one of these barroom machines, Marco, that we punch and hurt our hands, but they got this machine that they travel around the world, UFC, and they'll take your punching power. Well, they put Ngannou, they told him to punch away, and it's been measured as the hardest punch on the planet Earth since they started doing that. That's who Alistair Overeem, with that potentially porcelain chin, is going to have to face.
A lot of times, Overeem.
Yes, and he's big. He can catch you too, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And so you're talking about. Guess what the over/under is?
The total's 1.5 rounds.
1.5 juice on the under. So don't go to the fridge, Marco, if you're watching the fight, or don't even blink. So, but anyway, again, Matt Holt's best bet is Pettis on the UFC 218 Saturday night card, round plus 220. And I got a feeling we're going to be cashing, man. He made a great argument for why we should bet this underdog. All right, best bets. Let's start with Marco. Check him out on Twitter @Marco in Vegas. His work, of course, at WagerTalk.com.
Well, I'm going to go to the NFL, look at Minnesota at Atlanta, and I know, Dave, when you broke this one down earlier, I can't disagree with anything you've said about Minnesota. They are playing good football. They do have great defense. And Case Keenum, last 3 games, man, he's played probably the 3 best games of his career. Ironically, that streak of his playing super well started when they put Bradford on the IR and they activated Teddy Bridgewater. That'll get your attention as a quarterback a little bit. See the guy, warming up on the sidelines, but they've done well. They've done so well that I'm going to use my fat and sassy call here. Last week, winning at Detroit. That game, actually the last 2 weeks, you go back 2 weeks ago, we talked about it. They had the premier game against the Rams. Mm-hmm. That was the marquee matchup that week, the 2 uprising teams in the NFC, and they dominated the Rams at home 24-7. Then went on the road Thanksgiving Day and beat Detroit. You're talking November 23rd, and that win basically sewed up the division. Mm-hmm. They have a 3-game lead now. Green Bay's not coming through the door anytime soon with Aaron Rodgers, so they're not looking in the rearview mirror at anybody that can close on them. It's their division. They got to feel a little bit relaxed, and you can't let your guard down in the NFL. And as far as Atlanta goes, yeah, I know that this 3-game winning streak has come against teams that are banged up, Dallas, Seattle, and Tampa Bay, but they can only play who the schedule puts in front of them. They've taken care of business, 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread. They've won 4 of their last 5 games, and those 4 out of the last 5 games came right after the New England game. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you guys, we talked about Atlanta at the beginning of the season. Most people always talk about the Super Bowl hangover for the loser. They came out of the gate winning their first 3 games, putting up big numbers, and everybody's saying, doesn't look like any hangover there. Then they had that funk that carried all the way to the New England game, and I really firmly believe that they were so obsessed with that rematch coming up with New England in Foxborough, because if you were an Atlanta Falcon player, the offseason last year had to just be miserable. Everybody putting up, what was the score, 28-3,
right.
You know, all those memes and everything,
yep.
You know, on Twitter. You had to think about that all year, how you blew that game. And I think they were just so focused on that rematch, and it just distracted them. But now that they went to Foxborough, got their butts kicked, I think it got them back to reality, and they're now back to football, and they're playing well. I'm not stepping in front of them. I like them here at home. Tough place to go into a dome. I know Minnesota knows how to play in a dome, obviously, but just the situation for Minnesota being all fat and sassy, the big 3-game lead. This is a game Atlanta needs. I'm taking the Falcons, and I'm laying the points.
I love the fat and sassy games. By the way, I've never looked at Marco before and thought of George Clinton like I did just now when he said, out of the funk. I mean, he put like extra emphasis there, and I'm thinking P-Funk All-Stars and Flashlight. And
I like it.
Marco? I don't know why that flashed in my mind, but it did.
I don't know either.
Yeah, that's a great song, man.
Never looked at
Flashlight.
Marco and thought of Hillary or Bill Clinton.
Dave Cokin on Twitter, at Dave Cokin. His work at WagerTalk.com. What you got, Dave?
Well, the Patriots, you know, and I know you made the case for Buffalo earlier, and it makes all the sense in the world, except for one thing. They're playing the Patriots, and the team's an absolute monster right now. And I'm just not giving the Bills much. You know, maybe they got out of the funk last week with a. It's a win at Kansas City. And, yeah,
that was a weak funk.
Of course, I was going. You knew I was going to do that. Okay?
It was more like the Mills brothers.
But that was an unnecessary insight. Okay? Gratuitous, taking advantage of my advanced age. You know, I just don't. I can't give Buffalo much credit for the win at Kansas City, and maybe I'm shortchanging him. I mean, they did go out on the road and probably mentally help themselves with that victory. But boy, Kansas City is just pathetic right now. That offense is grotesque, and here come the Patriots. And boy, the Patriots, they just know how to kick a team when they're down. I mean, last week they didn't really have a sharp performance last week. They end up winning the game by 18 anyway. It's like if you throw your money up in the air and there's nobody around, maybe you'll catch it. But that's about the only good thing to do if you're going to take that tact when you're going against the Patriots, because that's what the team's a monster. They just keep covering, and they can't set the number high enough.
Let me throw a good one out there for what you're saying.
Tons of money on the Patriots, and it doesn't matter.
Let me throw this one out there. On to your point, when you bet on New England in a game and you fail to cover, it's normally because it's their fault. There's something they did that just wasn't normal New England type football. If you bet against New England and you get thrashed and you lose that ticket, it is your fault. As the bettor, I'm serious, man. To Dave's point, it's about as simple as that. So there. Is that it?
That's it. Yeah,
okay, New England.
Patriots minus the points.
Just having a moment there. Anyway, all right. You can follow me at Scott Wins, also at WagerTalk.com. My best bet. I'm going to make it quick. This will be short and sweet as opposed to fat and sassy. We went against the KC Chiefs last week. It was juicy for two reasons. One, we got the win with the Buffalo Bills. Two, because I've got an outside shot now to cash under 9 wins after KC started 5-0, now 6-5. Going to take the Jets, going to take the points in this game. If you look at what's been going on in KC, when they started 5-0, Kareem Hunt was already, donned the Rookie of the Year. 609 yards rushing, 6.3 yards per carry. His last 4 games, he has a grand total of 173 yards on 2.9 yards per carry. It ain't going right up front right now for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then earlier this week, we're hearing all the people coming out saying it's time to bench Alex Smith and start Pat Mahomes. Maybe they rally the troops this week and get the win over the Jets. I don't think they will. I'm going to go with the New York Jets for the radio best bet for me this week. It's hard to say that, but we're going to take the Jets and go against a struggling Kansas City Chiefs team. All right, good stuff, guys. For Dave, for Marco, for Mark Seidel at the controls, for Matt Holt, I'm Scott Spreitzer. You know what to do. Put him in the win column. We'll check you out next week.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.